Thanks, everybody. I wanted to start off by thanking Betsy, but thank you for having me and inviting me to do this. It's my first time giving one of these talks, so bear with me. So I kind of wanted to just have really an informal talk about this process, how it's been for me. And so if you have any questions throughout while I'm talking, feel free to ask them, and I will try to answer them as best I can. But so when Betsy asked me to come and give a talk on a piece, I don't know, has anybody been to one of these talks before? No, Dwayne. So some of you know how this works. They sort of let you pick whichever piece you want to choose from the collection and talk about how it influences your work and things like that. And so when I was going through the museum's collection, I think I'm always drawn to the Native American collection. I'm a fan of folk art, and I also did a tattoo project here. I think Betsy might have mentioned that, where we made tattoos based on the museum's collection, and mine was taken from the Native American collection and actually got it tattooed here in the museum. But that's another project to talk about at another time. But so when I was walking through the museum, this piece in particular jumped out at me. Has anybody here heard of ledger art before? It's really interesting because, like most people, I feel like I don't think there's been one person that I've talked to when I've told them I was doing this event that I'd asked, oh, have you heard of ledger art? And nobody seems to know about it. And so when I saw it, the reason why I immediately gravitated to it is part of my practice is printing. I do risograph printing. And the paper that I print on a lot of it is found paper from estate sales. My wife, Sarah, and I like to go to estate sales and I'm always looking for interesting bits of ephemera to use in my print work or just for inspiration. And ledger paper is something that I find fairly often at estate sales. And so I've been kind of amassing a collection of it, wanting to print on it, but not necessarily having the right concept for it. And so when I saw this, I was like, whoa, what is this piece of work that somebody's doing on ledger paper and then it said ledger art, and I was like, what is this? Is like a whole genre of art that I'm not aware of. And so I get on the internet, as people do, and research ledger art, and the tradition has gone back over 100 years. It started with pioneers coming over and trading the Native Americans for different things. They used it for trade, and then they began using it for their own documentation of Native American life. And let me see. So I began researching more, found several books. There's really big books all about ledger art that I immediately purchased. And then I thought about it, was researching into Dwayne's work, and I was like, well, he's, around. I should see if I could contact him somehow. And so I found his website, but his website didn't have any contact information on it. So I had to hunt around, found him on Facebook, sent him a direct message on Facebook, and he immediately responded. We started talking about it, and I think initially he was very confused as to why some white guy was going to be giving a talk about his work, which I totally understood. And I was asking him questions, and we were kind of going back and forth, and he was really great at answering them. And he was like, well, you should just call me. And so he gave me his phone number, and I called him, and we talked for over an hour on the phone. He also has a piece in the Fashion Now show that's downstairs. It's The Hat. Has anybody seen that piece? hat made out of vintage paper as well. It's a really cool piece. So yeah, and so when I got on the phone, he again asked sort of, why is this white guy explaining my work or talking about my work? And so I told him, like, oh, they said I could pick any piece from the collection. I picked yours. And he was like, oh, now I'm starting to like you. And so that was a nice turn. And then we had a great conversation just talking about sort of the history of ledger art and how, there's still, to this day, artists that are doing ledger art in sort of the traditional style where it's, kind of what you see up there, where it's Native Americans in full dress on horses, things like that. And his approach was, I like this tradition, it's part of my culture, but I want to make it relevant to today's society. And so, and reflecting, Native American culture and what he has seen. So a lot of his work has that in it. And Betsy is going to be coming back with a photo. That was the one thing when I was talking to him on the phone. He said, I said, what is the thing that I should communicate if I were to tell them about this piece? And he was like, well, you should show the photo, which is the inspiration. So we have a photo that we'll be able to pass around that reflects what he is seeing in Native American culture today. Let's see. And so I went to the MFA program at PSU in social practice. I think here comes our photo. And one of my fellow students in the sort of my cohort, but she was in the fine art practice, she is a Native American and does a lot of work around a similar thing where she kind of does her take on traditional Native American culture mixed with sort of today's reflection of Native American culture. And she might be showing up here in a little bit. She was stuck in traffic, so I definitely wanted to bring somebody else in that had a little bit more grounded knowledge. So if there were deeper questions that I couldn't answer, she would hopefully be here to field them, but we'll see if she shows up. I think we're going to have continued conversation at the cafe, it sounds like, and she might possibly be there. But, and so when I was, so one of the things that I wanted to do for this talk was, since I would be sort of explaining how, I find ledger paper at estate sales, I figured I might as well do an example of that. So I have a print here for everybody, and I can kind of talk about my process with that. And I'll just open one up so you can see it. So has anybody heard of a risograph printer before? Before I get into this, is there any questions about what I've talked about so far? Anything?
Are those self-portraits of the artist?
No. So do you have? Yeah. So this was Dwayne. I'll pass this over here. Dwayne met some fellow Native Americans that are really into this lowrider bike culture, and they customize their bikes, and it's sort of their version of the horse, I guess, kind of thing. And they, trick them all out with their own custom paint jobs and all that. And so he, thought that would be an interesting representation of, this is Native American culture as it stands today. It's part of it as well. So, any other questions? So I'll show you real quick the piece I have here. So a risograph printer, it's from Japan originally, the machine, and you most likely have seen one of these printers. They look like a photocopying machine, and a lot of times churches and schools will use them to make high, run thousands of prints for like newsletters and things like that. And I come from sort of the graphic design world where even that sort of people that work in design, a lot of people hadn't known about them, and it's only been in the last, I think, about 10 years that people have been discovering them and finding them, because now you can find them for fairly cheap. And the prices are rising since more people are finding them and getting excited about using them. But I bought mine from a church in Gresham for $75. And so it's basically like an automated screen printing process. So it's all internal. It makes its own screens. You basically, just like screen printing, you are a similar process where you are similar to the photocopy process, where you put the original artwork on the glass, and then when you say make a master, it does it all internally, makes the screen and wraps it around this drum, and you have to have a different drum for each color that you're printing with. So I have these like large cases that hold each drum, and I have like 6 different colors. But the great part about it is I can send any type of paper through it, pretty much, and it takes anywhere from business card size paper up to 12 by 18, and so that's another reason why going to these like estate sales and finding all these interesting papers works well for this format. So this is the piece that I created for this, and it's interesting. It's from the Waverly Country Club, and I don't know, it doesn't have a year on the paper, but I basically found a big box of this. And what I did here, this original yellow area was, did anybody go to the Monster Drawing Rally? I don't know if you saw a piece that was similar to this, but so I had done the yellow piece for the Monster Drawing Rally, thinking that I would customize it there. And so I did that, and then I still had more of these left over, so I decided to print on that. And it says, if I got a penny for my thoughts, I'd be a millionaire. And it's basically just all these different, I do a lot of illustration with character work, a lot of drawings of my cat. If you go to my website, you'll see lots of drawings of my cat. But and I'm always interested in like facial expressions and how you can make a character out of anything and it can communicate a lot. And so this was sort of supposed to represent my thoughts and feelings and ideas and how we have tons of them floating around our head, and they, so I don't know if there's any questions about the risograph process or.
What kind of ink?
So it's actually like it's a soy-based ink, and
Water-based, oil-based?
it's a soy like oil, I guess, based. Yeah.
What's the advantage of doing your printing as opposed to, say, using a rapidograph pen or a magic marker?
Yeah, I mean that's what I did for the Monster Drawing Rally, but I guess the reason for doing it on the risograph is it allows for experimentation. I get a lot of unexpected accidents happen using this process, and I can quickly experiment with it. So just even changing the colors out and then seeing how that affects it. Because initially I had printed, I think, fluorescent pink instead of the black. And it wasn't working, so then I went back and I just did it with the black. But the colors really work well together in terms of you get that same overlay effect that you get with screen printing. Yeah, exactly. And it does, like, you can tell with the yellow, and I'll just pass this one around if people want to look at it while we talk. But you can get really nice, just like flat, big areas of color with it. that are really vibrant, and the color is really great too. The fluorescent pink especially is pretty amazing. Yeah?
How does the paper age, the ledger paper?
It's interesting because I was noticing that with this one, which is from 1890, where you can barely see it, but it looks like it wasn't necessarily ledger paper in terms of, with letterpress printing on it. It's more just like lined paper, and you can see it. It's really faint. But I mean, the paper that I have is, I think I have stuff that's from like the 50s or whatever, and I don't know if it's because it's been sitting in boxes, but it looks brand new.
Where did you get your envelope that you printed?
Oh, so actually, so I printed this on the risograph as well. That's the other nice thing is I can.
The thickness of paper is.
Yeah, you can. It's since I only paid $75 for it, I feel fine about shoving weird things into it and hoping that it will work. And I found this. I did a show in London that was like an illustration show, and I wanted to make some bags for that, and so that was the sort of impetus of trying that. And then.
So your bags aren't from an estate sale?
I think we just ordered them. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But I'm always like, if I were to see bags like this at an estate sale, I'd probably buy them. Yeah. Any other questions? Let's see if I have any other notes of things I want to talk about. Yeah, that's mainly it. So, yeah.
Can you tell me then, going back to the illustration,
Yeah.
the pose of the figure, is that just a compositional conceit, or is there significance to that?
Did you see the photo? Did the photo go around? Because I think he's pretty much in that pose, isn't he?
Oh,
No, I think he was not on this name.
Oh, he's on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not ask him about sort of the composition of it, other than that it was influenced by that photo.
Right.
So.
Just, anytime someone's on their knee or it's a little bit interesting.
Yeah.
In context, I didn't know if there was something.
Yeah, he didn't. I asked him in terms of like symbolism and things. I mean, that's the other thing that really drew me to his work, even after like researching, is he is self-taught. Artist, which I, for the most part, I had started drawing probably 5 years ago, and I'm always inspired by people that are self-taught or folk art and things where it's just driven by, their passion and interest in mark making and drawing and things like that. So, but in terms of like symbolism, I feel like that would have, we discussed the piece enough that I don't think that was ever something that he mentioned. He didn't mention anything about any sort of symbolism deeper than commenting on sort of contemporary Native American culture. That was sort of the main impetus.
Is it pencil or ink or what's the medium?
It says, I believe it's yeah, colored pencil, yeah. The other one says crayon, graphite and crayon, yeah. So, but there's some really great books if you are interested in ledger art, and I haven't even had the chance to fully dive into them, but there's some really awesome. And there's also a website that's all about ledger art that has a huge archive. It's really amazing. And there's a kid's book as well that I found that is told through ledger art. It's interesting. It's a collaboration with a writer and an artist who are both white, not Native American, but it's done really well. And I talked to Dwayne a little bit about that as well. And
What's the name of the book?
the children's book, I can't remember. I got it from the library. I can look it up between now and the cafe, and I can find it and show it to you. But I got it from the local library. So, yeah.
So apart from just the art is on ledger paper, are there other strictures that are around the ledger art, or just anything?
That's, yeah, I mean, as far as through my research between when I was asked to do this and now, it's like that's the sort of lineage of the practice is just, using ledger paper. And as I said, like, there's currently Native Americans that are still doing the drawings in the traditional style, and people collect them for that, look. Dwayne also mentioned that he has a collector that buys his stuff that calls his work ironic, and he didn't really understand why, like that description of it. Because he feels like this is just a really honest reflection of what he sees. And there's some great images online of further pieces like the one below here where it has sort of interacting with just sort of white America and the reservation, and seeing how they're kind of like put on as a show for the white people that come and like want to photograph Native Americans and on the reservation, things like that. So, any other questions?
I got a question.
Yeah.
I know there's a work of his on you in the Native Fashion.
Yeah. I mentioned that.
Which is a hat made of ledger paper.
What-
And I'm not sure if he talked at all about working in, beyond two-dimensional.
Yeah.
Outside of that piece.
Yeah.
This is his primary work.
Yeah, this is his primary, from what I gathered, this is his primary way of working. And we didn't get to have a chance to talk too much about the hat piece other than that it was in the show. And if you look at it, it doesn't really actually seem like it's made out of ledger paper. I'd be curious to ask him. It looks like it's book pages. But it's really great because he constructed feathers and everything out of it. Yeah. Any other questions? All right.
You can also ask more questions.
Yeah.
Lots of wine, which always helps.
Yeah.
And we have non-alcoholic options too. If you want to join us down there.
Yeah, and I have prints for everybody if you would like to grab one on your way out.